So I would like to ask you about how did you come up with the idea of biological terms or biological activity? Are you interested in biological or biology? Thank you.
Um, thing is, I was majored in biology um, at college. So, but the funny thing is, it didn't come to me until quite late in the process because when I was at film school, I felt very, everyone else, they came from film, they came from literature, they came from something similar to, related area. But I came from biology, so I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't want to tell anyone. So when I started writing the script, I had some issue with the father's occupation, and it took many drafts. And one day I was like, oh well, maybe I should, instead of looking away from what I did before, I should probably just embrace it. So I decided to make him a cell biologist, and that sort of opened many doors for me. This whole idea of looking at the family through the microscope, and of also using the family as a cell of a society, as well as a cell in itself, how it represents a bigger society, bigger picture, and how it responds to outside um, changes. And the whole thing became sort of naturally to me, and yeah, and then I decided to, okay, so this is kind of a new perspective to look into a family. So that's where it came from.
My question is, how do you came up with the story idea, this family issue? Is it a social issue in China, or where you come from? I really want to know how your takes about your your way of storytelling, like cinematography and all the patterns you put throughout the film, and then the sound design to build the tension, the music. Maybe that's the question. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's for a masterclass. Maybe many years later. Anyway, okay, I'll start with the first one. The story idea. When I had because I've always been interested in family and family structure, but then there are also so many movies about family that have been made before. So for me, it was a matter of finding the right perspective, the right angle. When I was a child, I have always been interested in looking at other families because when I was a guest in other families, there always this sense of, okay, every family is kind of functioning in their own ways. Like they have their own code of contacts. They have their own language, and as an outsider, a lot of things are a little bit mysterious. Um, so I think that was a starting point as a feeling of family being mysterious. And then, of course, a lot of the social issues came in during the research. And for me, what you mentioned earlier, that was what I was thinking was like, I wanted to focus on this family, but of course, I also wanted to talk about bigger things. And the bigger things that is not just, well, it's a Chinese story, of course, but I also wanted to be relatable to people outside of China, and this pressure on kids to be successful, to achieve, is a universal kind of thing. So I think that became why I decided to continue with the story, because there's something universal about it, but also it's very Chinese, and there's also the visual, the aesthetics. There's something I can explore there. Um, so, and then you asked about the visual and the sound design, and I think that goes back to what I said before when I had the idea of this biology, the microscope. It came to me in discussions with my director of photography, in the way that when I wrote the script, I imagined it to be very distant and objective, to portray the family. But when I start pre-production, I feel like I wanted to get closer to these characters, to what they think and what they want. And in biology, when we observe, when we look through the microscope, we think that, okay, the closer we get to certain object, the better we will know about them. But interestingly, when we started to experiment with the camera work, we realized that actually the closer we get to these characters, the closer we zoom into them, the more mysterious they become. Like we kind of we don't know if we should believe what they say, even if they say in such an honest way. And that became sort of the foundation of our decision of the camera work. And the sound, we built that also around it because the camera work is still quite objective. And I think with sound, we get to be more experimental in it because, I mean, I believe in this saying that sound is half the movie. And I think this one, we're really kind of opening up the sound and the music, really opening up the other half.
Is there anything particular about the colors and the wardrobe choices and like the characters dynamics between Shuo and Wei? Okay, that's all for the question. Thank you.
Yes, that's very attentive, you. So about the white, it is. So the idea is that, you know, with Shuo's character, I wanted to create someone who is as open as the film itself. How you see, how the audience see the character will determine how they interpreted the film. And this is probably one of the biggest challenge of creating such a character, which is mysterious yet open to interpretation. So with his wardrobe, when we discuss this white, so when you watch kind of close to the end, when he start wearing more and more white, I think one of the questions is like, was he lying in the beginning, you know, and how much of what he said was true, and that also determines how you interpreted both his character, his motivation, and how his dynamic is with the family, how you see this character. And the blue, because there are of course certain stages in the film that he needs to go through with his wardrobe. In the beginning, he wears always the same thing, and that has a little bit of blue in it, and that sort of becomes when he kind of slowly getting into the family. While his wardrobe started to change, because he started wearing waist clothes, and then he's wearing his more like his father, and then he's wearing white. But at the same time, the family, you see the other people, they're wearing a little bit more blue. So it's in that way, we're using also the costume to tell, in a way, a similar story.
My name is Shana. First, I'm very impressed with the two actors, with the kids actors, because both is like representing emotions. Good, actually, it's a good emotion. So we cannot, like, we both sympathize with both characters. So I want to know how, I mean, the process of casting these two actors. And also, I'm curious why is the title is Brief History of a Family. Thank you.
So the casting was a long process. I reviewed a lot of kids' materials, both with acting experience and without acting experience. And then I asked maybe a couple dozen people to come to the audition. And I cast Shaw precisely because what you just said, because when he was doing the scene reading and I watched the tape back, he was the only one who on screen, when he read, it felt like he wasn't acting, but then you couldn't stop wanting to watch him and you wanted to know whether he's telling the truth or not. So I think that subtlety in the performance and the naturalness, I think it's perfect for this character. And I think on set, the main job is actually to keep that, to not make him act. And I think that as an actor, always there's a tendency to act more, to give more. But I think on set, I'm trying to do the opposite by capturing what was already there in a natural way. And this is something I also think it has to do with his age. because I think given a few years when he becomes more like an idol, it would be different. I think I captured him in probably the best time. And the other kid, he's very different. He came in with an energy of he really wanted to show. He's eager to show what he can do, but at the same time, he's very honest. So when we started working together, I like we talked a lot about his character and motivation because I think he has a very approachable personality. So I wanted to also bring a little bit of him into Wei's character because I was afraid when I was writing that he would feel like a kind of like a dumb boy next door. But then with his performance, I think he's becomes more relatable and funny and honest, and also a bit vulnerable. I think that's why we're sympathize with both characters. But that was a plan. That was a challenge. I will also say, when I was writing, I want people to sympathize with both. What was the second question?
Why is the title is Brief History
Oh,
of?
okay, yes. um, yeah, that when I was thinking of the title, it's always difficult. But I saw the book on my bookshelf by Stephen Hawking, A Brief History of Time, and I thought what he was doing with that topic, with the beginning of the universe, is that he found his own way of looking at that part of history and that part that subject. It's about perspective again. So I think for me, I was trying to do the same thing. I have a different angle to look at the family, so I decided to call it that. And also, it's quite brief. Also a little bit about the aesthetics side.
But doesn't have a Chinese title. The original Chinese title is it?
The Chinese title is same as the
Same.
English one. It's not the translation, but it's the same as Brief History of a Family.
Okay. So the same nih. Karena biasanya sebagian film Chinese bisa beda artinya dengan yang judul Inggrisnya dipilih untuk internasional. Oke, masih ada lagi.
Just sorry, I wanted to add, but actually in some territories where the film will be released, they will call it Blood and Water because there used to be one of the English titles that I used. Because we have a saying, blood is thicker than water. So in this film, that was also touched upon. So for some countries, they prefer that title.
First, is there any similarity between your own personality and the characters? Any similarity between you and maybe one of them, or is it really the opposite? Second, are you working on another movie? Because I think we all want to see what your next project is.
So the first question was.
Is there any similarity between?
Oh yes,
Similarity,
personality.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But your personality.
Sorry, yeah. Yes, I would say when I thought of these characters, it wasn't autobiographical. But what I borrow from my own upbringing and from my friends is like in ways struggle between wanting to be himself, wanting to explore what he likes, and feeling the pressure from the parents to become who they want him to become. I think that's a universal struggle that I borrow. And for the personality part, I think I let the actors that I cast to, in a way, to have some of them in the character. So it's less about me, but more about the actors and how they have their chemistry with the character.
Okay.
And the second question, I'm also curious of what I'm going to do next. But yes, I do have a couple of things I'm thinking, both original ideas and probably adaptation.
Will there be something about biological?
We'll see.
No.
I don't know because I also don't want to limit.
Yeah.
Because I believe that with every film there is a particular perspective that you find, and I think this film biology is a perfect one. I don't know if the next film it will be the same, but it will be something.
Oke, satu pertanyaan lagi ya, last question. Oke, itu.
So perhaps my question is quite simple. While you were making this movie, were you making this movie with the thought of wanting to enforce a certain strict message to the watchers of the movie, or are you simply trying to depict what is happening in the society and this phenomenon, and trying to give the watcher something to discuss and think on?
Thank you for the question and analysis. It is the second second thing that you said. Making the film. Another challenge is to keep it focused but open at the same time. So you have to make a story that would attract the audience, that would keep them engaged, but at the same time, it has to be open in the sense that, sometimes I find it a little strange watching a movie with a very clear message, kind of like a moral preaching. So that's what I'm trying to avoid with my own film. But I also think what's interesting is that when you have an open film, and sometimes it kind of people get lost or get confused. But that's my job to guide the audience to exactly those questions that you were asking before, to think of those questions, to discuss those questions. And of course they will have different views, but that's the point of the film, is to encourage those kind of conversation.
Oke? Terjawab nih? Oke.